Obi-Wan Kenobi came out about 3 years ago, the miniseries on Disney+, and like a lot of people, I was pretty positive but lukewarm on it. I thought it was okay. It's decent, you know? It's nowhere near Mandalorian in terms of like what I really enjoy out of Disney+, but it's not the worst it has to offer. It's absolutely better than some of their other stuff. I enjoyed it. I gave it a positive review, and I didn't think much of it since. I'm like most people. I kind of forgot about it and moved on. Well, someone I know hadn't seen a lot of the Star Wars stuff, so we watched a bunch of stuff, and one of the things was Obi-Wan, the TV show. So I watched it again. This is like 6 months ago, and I thought, okay, this is kind of what I expected again. But then it sat with me a little longer. Something I didn't expect, where it's like, oh, okay, the more I thought about it and what that show did, especially for the characters, for the stories, for the setting, just for the overall arc of Star Wars, and of course for itself in isolation, I was actually like really, really impressed the second time around. I think it really holds up. I think I have a deeper appreciation and understanding of what that show was doing, and for the most part, succeeding at what it was doing. For the longest time with Star Wars, my main issue, not my main issue, but one of my main issues with the prequels, with Episode 3 specifically, is that the character that Anakin Skywalker becomes at the end of Episode 3 does not feel like the character we meet at the start of A New Hope. It does not feel like Darth Vader. You can put him in the suit, you can have him walking around, you can have him have the James Earl Jones voice, but at the end of the day, that whiny baby for all three of those movies is not the same character we met in A New Hope. A New Hope, the original trilogy, that's Darth Vader. The end of Episode 3 is a pussy in a Vader costume. They're just not... My mind never connected those two as, like, that's the same. I had to, like, force myself to think that way. This show does a lot of that legwork. It does so much to bridge the gap, and I was really, the second time around, blown away as to how and why. I view the show as a 6-episode action-adventure therapy session between two men who really need it. These two guys, they're on opposite paths in life. They're completely different, but they've so heavily influenced each other, whether they care or realize or not, that they're unable to exist without a certain level of closure from the other. And that's where you pick them up at the end of Episode 3, and obviously the start of Obi-Wan the series, where Obi-Wan, it's like he said, I have failed you, Anakin. Obi-Wan is in disarray. He has absolutely torn up with guilt about the fact that he has failed not just one of his greatest students and one of his greatest apprentices, but like the person who was supposed to be the chosen one, the most important person in the Star Wars universe at that time. He failed him, and that's all on him. And he has just regressed into easily a shell of the great Master Obi-Wan Kenobi that used to be. And conversely, Anakin has everything handed to him. He's on top of the game, on top of the world. He's got the entire force of the Empire behind him. You don't even see Palpatine because you don't need him in the series right now. He's just running the show. He's got all the Inquisitors. He's got all of his troops, all of his everything, just strong as can be. And he is hell-bent on finding and killing Obi-Wan. That is his main goal in life. It is his mission. It is his statement, as one would be at the end of Episode 3. At least as Anakin Skywalker would be, because he doesn't, he doesn't accept anything in life. Everything's got to be fucking the biggest deal and issue of all time. I really, really appreciate what this show did. There's a lot of, like, overtones of, like, a relationship, like a breakup, right? And Obi-Wan Kenobi feels like he's failed the relationship. But then Anakin Skywalker, he's with Palpatine now. It's a lot like when, like, oh, I'm with a new girl now, so now I want to, like, flaunt her in front of you just to rub into my ex, because that's what they are to each other in that way. Anakin's hurting. Like, I finally got the subtext that Anakin was actually hurting. I never got that from the prequels. I just got really bad, lazy writing from prequels. This is finally giving that character that I think George Lucas envisioned when writing Episodes 1, 2, and 3. This is how he kind of should have been portrayed, with the confliction. So on the outward, Anakin is projecting like, I'm so powerful now. That line, I am what you made me. He's really rubbing it in, literally rubbing Obi-Wan to the ground, but like really rubbing it into Obi-Wan like, this is what you did to me. Look what I have become because of you and your mistakes and your failures. This is what my life now looks like. I'm a burnt, 3-limb missing, homunculus robot man. And it is all your goddamn fault, Obi-Wan. And now, here, the tides have turned. Now you have nothing, no Empire, no Jedis to help you, nothing but a tiny little lightsaber. And I got the full force of my dark, Sith, everything. I got the whole empire behind me. You got nothing. And Obi-Wan's feeling it. He's always felt the pressure of that and that weight. And over the course of the show, and this is what I really appreciated about what it did, by the end of the show, you see that final fight where Obi-Wan has been through a little bit of an arc, and he's like, all right, I got to own up to what I did. I have to face Vader, and not just face him like, I have to fight him until he dies. I have to face what I did to him. I have to confront head on the problem that I am at some level responsible for creating. And that final lightsaber fight, it's just, it's equally as good as like a married couple coming together and arguing about everything that happened. Like in Marriage Story or in Kramer versus Kramer, where they have those big blow-up scenes. It's that energy, but translated via a lightsaber fight. It was really, really fun the second time around. And the final scene of the show, which I think just brings merit to the whole show. I think it justifies the whole show's existence, that conversation they have. I'm going to skip way to the end, but right when Obi-Wan strikes Vader down and Vader's got the half mask. First of all, excellent, excellent work weaving in how the deep James Earl Jones, David Prowse looking guy walking around wielding lightsaber is the same as Anakin burnt up. This does miles of legwork of merging those characters into one, because you see Hayden Christensen's face, half torn away, and every sentence he says merges between, it's like it'll start with Hayden Christensen saying it and it'll merge into James Earl Jones saying it and vice versa. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to just marry those two versions of the character into what they always were, which is the same character. And this just does so much legwork to make that happen. But anyway, aside from that, they're having that conversation. They both reach the end of their arcs with the same conversation. And Anakin, after all of this flaunting, after all of this like, fuck you, Obi-Wan, you did this to me, he finally relents and says, I did this to me. This was my choice. And I can fight that all day long, whether it's with a lightsaber or with personal trauma or whatever. I chose to go down this path. I didn't have to be, Palpatine's little secondhand man there. I didn't have to defect to the Jedi Order, to the Sith Order from the Jedi Order. I didn't have to take down everything. He didn't say all this. This is just him, obviously this is the subtext of what he's saying. But, horrible things happen to Anakin. But at the end of the day, he made his decision. Obi-Wan realizes, and that's what he says, my friend is truly dead. And that's the weight off of Obi-Wan's shoulders. Finally, after all the prequels, after all the decades, after all this time, just rudderless after the episode 3 where he's just got no plans and, depressed, Obi-Wan can finally have a sense of closure to his character where, okay, goodbye, Darth. And that's, leads into what he calls him in New Hope. I just thought, wow, this brings so much more merit to when they meet in A New Hope, where it just feels like two old frenemies having not seen each other in a very, very long time that are just like, okay, let's get it done. Whereas, after how Obi-Wan left him in episode 3, I was like, they must really just not give a shit about that anymore. But this is the series that makes that make sense, because the first time they meet since episode 3 is that scene in, I think, ironically, the 3rd episode of the miniseries where they have that exchange and everything's just full furious. And it's just, I just love by the end of the series, like they reach the end of their character arcs and they become different people, literally and figuratively. It sets them up perfectly so that now Obi-Wan has that weight off his shoulders. He can finally breathe easy. He can finally embody the Alec Guinness version of the character a little bit closer. And Darth Vader can, on some level, accept who and what he is and what he's done. And that's why Darth Vader in the original trilogy is a little more calm. He has his blow-up moments because he's Anakin, but he's calm, focused, sophisticated. He wasn't really any of those things in episodes 1, 2, and 3. That's why I never connected the characters. This does so much legwork for the series. It is nearly perfect in terms of being glue to bridge the gap between the prequels and the original trilogy. I have a lot of problems with those prequels. Even episode 3, easily the best one of the 3, is still, I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's got a lot of problems that are just systemic. But if you watch those prequels and then watch Obi-Wan the miniseries, I'm sorry, but that is a strong, strong finale to that Obi-Wan character's like journey there. And that, I think, justifies a lot of the bad decisions in the prequels. I think they're at least a lot mitigated, and they lead up to something a little more substantial than what we got in those movies. I think a lot of their characters' journeys are also mirrored in Reva and her journey, how she ends up, because she's a youngling, obviously, who survived, she's out for vengeance, and then that doesn't work because Darth Vader is Darth Vader. And by the way, that fight between Vader and Reva, where they spar for a bit, and then he throws her the saber. That's so him. Like, that's so Darth Vader. You know, not a lot of characters would be doing that, but the writers just get him. You know, like, that's, that fucking hits. Like, it's the extra 10%. It could have just been a fight with big lasers and then he wins, but no. They got to have that extra 10% of effort where they make him, like, that's what he would do. That's his character. Oh, so good. Anyway, Reva's character having vengeance against Vader because she's a youngling and she survived. When she fails at that, she learns that Luke is his child. She goes to hunt him down. And she's like, I will bestow the same trauma that you inflicted upon me and all my peers to you, and I will give you that trauma back. And she gets there and she realizes, like, I can't continue this cycle. The trilogies are all about generations, and to an extent, generational trauma kind of bleeds through as like subtext, especially with the sequel trilogy. So I just really appreciate how this just re-emphasizes those points and sets up those characters just in really interesting ways to movies that you've already seen and you can now appreciate a little bit more. I don't know. This miniseries really struck me the second time around. I think I really gained appreciation for what it did. So that's it. Just some things I picked up on rewatch, and I don't know. It's got a different place in my ranking and how I appreciate the Star Wars shows now. It's definitely a lot stronger than the first time I watched it. So yeah, that's about it. See you in the next one.